on the NCAA Oversight Committee. I don't want to leave Dedrick Taylor out either because I know he's on the coaches committee now as well. For our audience, for the Big West people, is this an advantage for our conference? What does it do? What does it entail, Dan? How did you get elected? You have to bribe anybody? Was it an open election? How'd you get to your spot?
Well, this is all big. It all is big for the Big West. One of the things I've encouraged our membership since I came on board in 2020 was to get involved in the NCAA governance structure. Put your name out there for committees. Even if you think you might not get it, get your name in the system and make people aware that you are interested in serving on committees. So I've tried to lead by example in many ways relative to that. So I'm on the Men's Basketball Oversight Committee that looks at everything and anything relative to the men's basketball enterprise of the NCAA, which obviously trickles down to all of us as all 32 conferences in that respect. I'm also now on the NCAA Council, which is the 40 leaders that are just under the board of directors, which the board of directors for the NCAA is made up of university presidents and chancellors. The NCAA Council is commissioners, athletic directors, senior women administrators, faculty athletic representatives that serve on a 40-person group that work through the governance processes, and then you're put down into committees below that. So Men's Basketball Oversight Committee is part of the Men's Basketball Oversight Committee. I'm also on the NCAA, the Men's Basketball Competition Committee, as well as the MBOC Administrative Committee. So I think 7 or 8 committees I'm on now as part of this, and I've really tried to push that amongst our membership. If you go to the musical Hamilton, which is all in that respect, you want to be in the room where it happens, and the Big West really has not been in the room where it happens. So we're trying to push people to get in that room.
Are you able to share these insights with the coaches and the ADs of the Big West, or is this something that you're going to have to obviously keep in your belt because it's in committee and it needs to be kept? You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
No, absolutely not. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm very transparent with a lot of the things relative to our membership, and I want to make sure that their voices are heard. So relative to NCAA council matters, which is a lot of NCAA legislation, anything from the things that you've read recently on transfers or infractions processes or the future of NCAA Division I, we are making sure our institutions have a voice, that they're providing any feedback to us as a conference office, that then I take that voice into these meetings that we have. So the key things with the Men's Basketball Oversight Committee have looked at are the transfer things that the council and the NCAA Transformation Committee have been a part of. Obviously, the basketball academies that they had back in 2019 got stopped because of COVID, bringing the basketball academies back from a recruiting and basically informational status on what college basketball is for those 1,000 student athletes on the men's side, and hopefully everything will get done on the women's side as well to establish a committee for 2023. So excited about where we're going as an NCAA, and particularly as the Big West.
All right, like a Baz Luhrmann movie, Dan, we're going to jump around a little bit. So we're going to have the timeline. We're going to go in and out a little bit. I don't know if you've seen Elvis yet, but a fantastic creation by the director Luhrmann, although a little off on an Elvis movie being shot in Australia. That's a whole other thing. You talked a little bit about men's basketball. There's a couple of burning questions for me about men's hoops. I was really intrigued. I think you guys announced this. It might have been in April or May. Starting next season, I think 23-24, the Big West going to an 18-game schedule. I don't know how much you can tell me, Dan. What was the thought process to this, which you kind of explained in the press release? Mm-hmm. And then how is the actual execution going to be? Am I going to lose out on a trip to Hawaii? You know, my yearly trip to Hawaii is, I guess, what I'm asking. I kid. What was the thought process? And then how are you guys going to actually execute that from team to team?
No, it's great. It really is personal in that respect. I mean, obviously, if you miss out on a specific trip, you missed that trip. But it really is a situation that we had a men's and women's basketball subcommittee. So we had 4 women's basketball coaches, 4 men's basketball coaches, 3 athletic directors that served on this subcommittee that met pretty much the end of March through the middle part of May, talking about all things relative to the men's and women's basketball enterprises in the Big West, how we can improve. And we talked about the basketball championships. We talked about scheduling. We talked about formats for the tournament. We talked about so many things during those 6 meetings that we had set up. And one of the things we looked at, Ghizal, was we currently have a 20-game schedule, a 20-game model. And this 20, and I'll talk about 2022-23 first. In 2022-23, you're going to see, if you haven't already seen the schedule release, we've got some games on Mondays, some games on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. So instead of just having that consistent Thursday, Saturday model, we had to kind of condense the schedule a bit.
Right.
And one of the things we talked to the membership about was this coming season, the time between December 25th and the beginning of the Final Four is 1 week less, because that Final Four moves back a bit and then it moves down. So in 23-24, the Final Four goes down a week. So you get a little bit more breathing room. This year we've only got only got 10 weeks to schedule 20 games. So that's why we had to try to condense. The 2 Mondays we're playing are holidays, to give the institutions some flexibility to play earlier games during the day if they want to get back Monday night. So we talked about going to 18 games as part of this schedule in 22-23. Well, the membership, because a lot of institutions were already finalizing their non-conference schedules, still working on them. They said, hey, we really want 20. So we stuck with 20. But 20, 23, 24, one of the things we looked at, particularly as we are trying to get better, we are trying to improve our metrics. And these are things that this committee talked about, was we've got to stop thinking about being a 15 and 16 seed consistently. And we've got to get up to the 12 and 13 seeds to give ourselves a better chance to win games, as well as the opportunity to try to improve our opportunity to get an at-large consideration as well. For those teams that are really good, to get that at-large consideration is big for us. So what they call the National Wild Card Week, both in men's and women's basketball, is something that's being floated since pretty much the beginning of the year, of matching up teams, putting the top teams against the top teams in some national caliber games to try to improve the opportunities for those teams, like Long Beach State on the men's side this year that won the Big West, to put them up against a Gonzaga or somebody like that, in playing 2 games during that week and try to improve their opportunity to get that at-large consideration. Whereas the teams that aren't as highly ranked would just be paired more regionally, but they get a home and road game. A lot different than the bracket buster situation that was played years ago. This would actually provide a home and road in the same week in the same year against 2 different opponents, and you don't have to return those games the next year. So, it really is going to help the teams that want to get better to get better. So in next year, instead of playing a full 20, we're going to play an 18 and 23-24. As long as the wild card week stays, it ultimately gets done, which we'll know here at the end of the month if it can get done for 23-24. So that 1 week during the conference play will be vacant for conference games just to play those 2 national wildcard week games. So again, as we try to improve not only basketball, all sports, we're looking at very similar type discussions with all of our coaches. But that's one of the things we're looking at with basketball right now, is trying to get more non-conference games that can excel our top teams, maybe into that large consideration, or strengthening their seed in the NCAA tournaments, both on the men's and women's side.
The 2 games that teams will essentially lose, the 2 conference games, is that a rotating basis, or is that determined, you don't want your top teams playing is that going to be an RPI thing or an NET thing, where maybe the top 2 teams won't play the bottom 2 teams in terms of net and RPI?
Yeah, the ideal thing, Ghizal, would be that the net would kind of dictate the preseason who would be up there, but the membership really wants to be random in that respect. And the challenge is, as you know, you've been around the Big West for a while, it's tough to say who the number 1 team is. I mean, I think Long Beach State for 21-22, Long Beach State was projected, I think, 8th in the preseason on the men's side, and ended up being the first place team. So the teams are so balanced and so competitive against each other that it's sometimes hard to determine what that 1 through 11 is going to look like, or who that ultimately is going to be there. So they asked for it to be more random in that respect. So that's probably what we're going to look to do.
Let's go back to the Dollar Loan Center 2022. Yep. In March, the Big West men's and women's basketball championships. As the commissioner of the conference, how did you assess it? Was it success? Was it kind of a baseline? Where are you with that? Were you happy with the events in mid-March in Henderson, Nevada?
Great question. The great way you put it. Was it a baseline or a success? I would say both. For one, we were the first event in the facility ever. So being the first event in there, that was a key focus for us. 5 weeks before the tournament, we were still focused on, tickets, who's going to be sitting where, all the seats in the building, versus really putting the ticket sales plan together. We were worried about more operationally, making sure the baskets work, the court works, the timing systems all work, all that other stuff. So that was a big focus for us, is making sure we could get in there and just make sure we didn't have to instigate a backup plan in that respect. But we learned some things. I think those fans that attended and the membership that attended absolutely loved it. Know it's a great facility. Realize what Henderson has to offer in so many ways. There's so many great things to do near the Dollar Loan Center right across the street, restaurants and things that you can do right there, as well as how close it is actually to the Strip. It's only 10 to 15 minutes away from Mandalay Bay and the Strip. So if you want to stay over there, you can easily get over there. But we learned some things. We actually have cut ticket prices for 2023 basketball championships. So fans will love to hear that, trying to make it more economical for them to come over and be a part of it, to be a part of the celebration and recognizing our teams for their postseason opportunities, but also their success and the seniors that are finishing up their careers in the Big West in that respect. So we're excited about what 2023 brings. Now that we know the building is running, now that the building literally has hockey going on, they've got indoor football going on, and they just added the NBA's G League to the facility. So we're really excited
Ignite.
about the Ignite. We're excited about being in this building with all of those partners and being a tenant and partner in the building. So we're really excited about where we're going.
You know, one of the questions that I was asked about, and people, you know, everybody who's open to trying new things. A lot of people said, hey, does Dan Butterly, does the people who run the conference now, do they not have respect for the fan base? Because the theory was that you guys obviously did a lot of research and you said, you know what, we don't need to cater to the fans who've been coming in Southern California. We're going to go build a new fan base. I thought you guys did a great job in terms of connecting with the community there. That a lot of community members from Henderson who maybe had nothing to do with the Big West who were out attending it. And you know me, I mean, I've loved Henderson long before anybody knew what Henderson was, before they built an arena there. But I did feel some of the long-term fans and alumni were a little bit miffed, you know, to go watch one game was about, you know, was going to be an investment of anywhere from $800 to $1,200 between the flight and the hotel and getting there and the tickets and whatnot. What do you say to those fans? I obviously encourage everybody to come out to Henderson, but the random trip is something of the past now that we're not in Southern California anymore. How do you address that objection?
It is a great question. And obviously I've dealt with that throughout my career, even at the time of the Missouri Valley, when we went from being in an institution site to actually moving the championship to St. Louis, and heard a lot of those same arguments and a lot of the same complaints. I hear them. We hope that they will give Henderson and Las Vegas an opportunity and a chance, that they will come over and be a part of it. I think they will be excited about it. The Honda Center was a great opportunity for the Big West for over 10 years in that respect. We've got great partners at the Honda Center that I think would have interest in the Big West in the future, any Big West event in the future, because it's obviously Orange County's arena facility. But with the OC Vibe being built and all the things that are coming up at the facility, this was a great opportunity for us, particularly during the construction phase of all that's going on there, to give Las Vegas and Henderson an opportunity. That is where college basketball and March Madness is during the month of March. As we looked at cost and the size of the venue, it was a great advantage for us to take advantage of that facility. I mean, if we can get if the Big West got 2,000 individuals in the Honda Center in an 18,000 seat building, it was a vast building in that respect. But if you get a couple thousand people in the Dollar Loan Center, it's going to feel like a very full environment. And we are focused on our student athlete experience, trying to create all of our championships into a first class event. It's unfortunate in many ways that for a lot of our student athletes, the Big West Championship is their NCAA championship. So we want to make sure it's a first class event for them, and that this be something that they will always remember. The feedback we got from teams, coaches, administrators was, wow, this was a great move. This was a great opportunity for us, and we're looking forward to growing the event in Henderson. And we are going to step it up even more this coming year. Now that we know that the building is running, we cut ticket prices to try to help those fans, make it more affordable for them to come over and be a part of it. We're going to hopefully have some great hotel opportunities for fans to take a part of as well, and hopefully a new partnership with Las Vegas that will help expand that and that reach for us. But I hear you. We definitely hear you, but we hope that you take advantage of the opportunity to come over and be a part of it.
No, I mean, and most of the alumni that I spoke with, they were happy. It seems like it's kind of an alumni donor event, and kind of the more casual fan gets shut out of it. I had a conversation. I don't know, maybe you spoke with Coach as well when he was at CSUN. You know, Mark Godfrey talked about the advantage of Vegas is you got 4 tournaments going on. So, you know, the people who cover the game and the people who are just into the game can stick their head in a couple of different arenas and get basketball. That was the one thing I was wondering is there a chance maybe you invert the schedule, right? Because traditionally, you know, the Mountain West, the Big Sky, the West Coast Conference, they play their women's games during the day and their men's games during the evening. Was there any thought given to maybe flipping the schedule? Because if you're a fan of men's hoops and you're watching these Pac-12 and these WCC games at night, and the Big West games are available during the afternoon, that's some motivation to go to Henderson. Ergo, the women's games that are generally during the day, if you can have some primetime women's hoops at the Dollar Loan Center, that might be incentive for somebody to drive from the Strip. And hey, let me catch Amy Atwell playing for Hawaii in her tournament game.
Yeah, definitely something we look at on an annual basis. And one of the things that somewhat drives it is the ESPN schedule in that respect. So ESPN's got the men's championship game. They've also got the two men's semifinal games, which have to be at night. We're shutting down ESPN every night on that Friday and Saturday night. So when you look at the format in that respect, you've got to be cognizant of the rest period between games for those teams that are going to be participating in those evening games. So those are things that we definitely look at. There are opportunities to potentially flip the quarterfinals, where we could play the men's quarterfinals on Wednesday and the women's quarterfinals on Thursday, but then the women would have to come right back and play at noon on Friday. So again, things that the subcommittee will continue to take a look at. We've even, Giselle looked at the potential of playing a week earlier, getting in there at the same time as the West Coast Conference week, and potentially finishing up early in the week and taking more advantage of weekend dates versus being during the week. So things that the subcommittee definitely took a look at, things that we'll continue to look at for 2024 and beyond. In that respect. But that is one of the things with 5 conferences playing their championships out there between the Pac-12, the Mountain West, the Western Athletic Conference, the WCC, and the Big West. There's a lot of advantages for us, for not only just because of the experience for student athletes, but the media coverage, the officiating pools are all right there in town. So we were able to take advantage of all those opportunities.
I want to jete from basketball to baseball. Are we going to see a Big West baseball tournament or a Big West baseball championship at some point in the near or distant future?
Well, I can tell you that there's active discussions relative to adding a baseball championship to the Big West, and not only a baseball championship, but potentially softball, women's volleyball as well. So those are the 3 sports that we currently do not have a post regular season conference championship in that respect. So I can tell you that we are actively discussing those through the coaches groups to the membership, and ultimately the board of directors will have a vote on that potentially as early as December. During their December meetings. But yes, the discussions are being had. I definitely understand the strength of baseball in this conference, and we've actually looked at a meeting with the coaches a couple weeks ago, and the coaches understand some of the performance issues that we're currently having relative to only getting 1 team in the baseball championship and even a 3 seed out of 4 up at the Stanford Regional this year. So we're looking at competitive improvements, and the coaches are taking that lead relative to that as well. But had some really good discussions with our baseball coaches a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's not on you. That's got to come from the schools. I mean, we have a number of schools in this conference that are invested in baseball, and we obviously know who those are because they're the ones that are consistently in the postseason, and everything's got to kind of, come to the middle. We got to kind of have a middle of the curve, as George Costanza once said. Just a suggestion, Coach. There's this really great baseball stadium in Lancaster that nobody ever uses ever since the Jethawks move out. So if you're looking for a point, I think that's kind of central to most of the Big West schools. If you ever were going to have a postseason championship, did you read the Rooney letter? What did you think of the Mike Rooney letter?
I don't think I've actually received a copy of the Rooney letter, but in that respect, I definitely understand where baseball sits nationally in the Big West. That we can be extremely competitive in baseball. Obviously, with the College World Series appearances and the things that the Big West and national championships have had over the years. Definitely understand where baseball is in the pecking order amongst our institutions, amongst our coaches, and particularly nationally in that respect. And I'd love to be able to see some improvement there and things that we've got working on behind the scenes right now.
It wasn't that long ago, 3, 4, or 5 years ago, where it was a multi-bid conference every year. And I think Coach Serrano, when I spoke with him about it, he said, we don't have that bellwether like we used to. We knew Fullerton was going to be there every year, or you knew Long Beach State was going to be there every year, and then the other teams that can compete against them would get in. And obviously, solution. The other thing is, here's the logistical part of it, Dan, is that now with all these other like the Pac-12, for example, their season now is truncated a week, so that's one less week that Big West schools can schedule. Pac-12 schools. I know specifically this was an issue for UC Riverside because one of their non-league, they have a crosstown rivalry with CBU. Well, CBU now is eligible for the WAC tournament, so that last week of the year, they're not going to be available to play UC Riverside anymore if that's what they wanted to do. So a lot of these wheels that are spinning, and I know you got to deal with 100 of these things, so it's really interesting to see how that all comes together, and I appreciate your answer on that tournament.
No, and absolutely, Giselle, and that's one of the things that the coaches have looked at is relative to if we had the championship, you have to cut a week out of the schedule, or you have to decrease the round robin. So those are all things that they're looking at right now.
You're a conference commissioner, and I have you for a couple of minutes. So I wanted to ask you, you get a call, Tom Davis wakes you up in the morning, and he tells you, Dan, I just got, well, you probably get it before he, but for practical purposes, I just got a text from the ADs at Irvine and Long Beach, and they're going to join the West Coast Conference. So George Klyavkov woke up one morning and was told that USC and UCLA are heading to the Big Ten. As a conference commissioner, when you hear a bombshell like that, what's the process? What do you go through? What are the strategic moves a gentleman like you would have to make in that situation?
Well, I anticipate the Pac-12 commissioner had the same relationship. I mean, good relationship with his membership, his board of directors, his presidents, his athletic directors, senior women administrators, faculty reps. I mean, even at UCLA, USC, I would anticipate they called him before the news started leaking to give him a heads up. And then obviously you get your membership together, determine the course that you're charting, and kind of work from there. I mean, as I've made the analogy over the last couple of years, you always, as a AD, has multiple head coaching candidates in his or her head. If they were to let go of a head coach, who that next up might be, who's on that radar. I mean, I'm always cognizant of the national landscape and what we're looking at. We've been fortunate that out west, we're in a pretty good position in the Big West. As you look at the memberships out this way, the Pac-12 is an FBS conference. The Mountain West is an FBS conference. The Big Sky is kind of the north and west side of their FCS level conference. You can look at the West Coast Conference and the Big West, or what's considered Division I conferences, which we don't have football, but the WCC is the private institutions, whereas the Big West is the public institutions. So we've got a really good fit out here amongst the 67 institutions that are based west of Denver, Division I institutions. But being in that situation, obviously you would immediately get together with your membership and chart a course. You would wish the institutions that maybe left for an opportunity they feel was better in that respect. You wish them well, and you figure out what the next steps are for your own membership and keep the conference moving forward. And I think that's what George is doing up at the Pac-12. You can't get public on it, obviously, but I know George. I've known him for a number of years from my time working at the Mountain West in Las Vegas. Now he's at the Pac-12. I know he's got a lot of great things ahead.
Do you, in terms of, we always hear speculation about potential expansion and whatnot, and you guys released a statement that at this point, you're not looking to actively expand. But I'm guessing, it's like when you're at a job in a certain industry, like I used to work in real estate. When you're in real estate, you kind of got to know who's coming and going at the competitors, right? Because a guy you work with who's now a manager, you got to keep track of all that stuff. And I'm guessing it's the same for you. Even though you're not actively looking to expand, you have to have communication with some schools. And I know probably in your back pocket, there are probably people that have contacted you with regard to, hey, if you were to expand, how would you look at it? What's that like for a conference commissioner? You mentioned earlier, we're at 11 schools right now. 12 would seem to be a nice round figure. Do you have a wish list? Do you have a short list potentially for who that 12th school would be? And then we already talked about if somebody were to leave, what you might do. Hawaii was supposedly in play for a little bit, and I'm sure that was something that went through your head.
Yeah, you're always cognizant of the national landscape and what's going on in that respect. But obviously, it's up to the membership and what they want to do. With the NCAA transformation, Division I transformation, we're all still waiting for the transformation committee from the NCAA to determine what the new Division I membership standards are going to look like. As we've heard nationally, there's some commissioners or some institutions out there that believe there's too many teams or too many institutions in Division I. So I anticipate the bar to be a Division I member will be raised as early as October for future academic years. And what that looks like, we don't know yet. I literally had a commissioner meeting just before this, and we're all still kind of waiting to see what the transformation committee comes out with relative to that. But it could be a situation that some institutions that are currently Division I may determine that they can't meet the new standards. And in that respect, you've got to determine what the future of your membership looks like and see what's going to shake out relative to other conferences. I mean, if all of a sudden it's millions of dollars to stay a Division I member, then you're going to have some institutions that say we just can't continue to fund it at that level. And so you're going to see some conferences that are going to have to look at other options, other membership that's out there. But ultimately, that's up to our board of directors, whether they want to consider not only full membership or affiliate memberships in certain sports. If you have a sport that's a little low on membership, what that would look like. And we continue to have those discussions with our membership on interest. And our board meets a couple times a year. And we have that on the agenda every time just to kind of give them a sense of what the national landscape looks like. And they're interested in expanding. And as we coming out of the May meetings, Ghizal, that was pretty much where they were at. Not interested at this time, but we'll continue to keep our pulse on the landscape.
I'm reading a lot about the Pac-12 stuff, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. And now you got the Big 12 potentially, set up. They're saying they're going to maybe raid the Pac-12. The Pac-12 looking to potentially add some schools. So the message here, especially from the networks, ESPN and Fox, they're the two big boys on the block, right? And football is what drives the bus, right? And we have a bunch of schools in the Big West Conference. All you hear is, there's financial issues, this, that, and the other, arenas, this, that, and the other. I mean, is it time for the Big West to get back into the football business? Because it looks like you mentioned that, Division I may go through a cataclysmic change in terms of who's going to be eligible and who's not. I get it. Football programs are expensive to maintain, and you need, it's beyond just the scholarships, it's the personnel to manage them. But if there literally are billions of dollars on the table with regard to television, and now with two teams out of the LA market for football, is that, I mean, I'm guessing it's not going to happen, but is that something you got to run through your head? You got to kick the tires on that, Dan?
Well, I tell you, my biggest goal right now is to protect the 18 sports the Big West currently has, making sure that we are providing a great experience for those sports, great opportunity for our student athletes to succeed in every facet of those sports, and continue to make sure that we protect, as I quote Under Armour, protect this house. I've got to protect those 18 and make sure our institutions are fully funding and doing the things they need to do for those 18 sports in the Big West. Now, as we look at potential of adding sports, that's always a concern. If you add a sport here or there, what's it do to the 18 that we currently have? I don't want to add sports to have to drop sports in that respect. And if any institution that adds football, they know that that's tens of millions of dollars in investment to get the program up and going, but also a very similar commitment to keep that sport going. And not only in obviously the football operations, the facility maintenance, and all the things that you've got relative to a football program, but also obviously you've got to add equal numbers of women's participation scholarships as well. So the costs increase significantly. And I like where we are right now. Obviously we've got two institutions that play FCS football in UC Davis and Cal Poly, play football in the Big Sky Conference, but all other sports here. And Hawaii obviously plays football in the Mountain West. I don't see anybody else in the conference looking to add football at this point. And again, just trying to protect our 18, I think is the core mission that we've got moving forward.
I'm just saying, hey, you live this is going back obviously to when you and I were in school. You're paying $400 per month in an apartment. You're working 20 hours a week. You want to move into this snazzy pad that's $750. Well, you got to add about 10 hours a week to your weekly work schedule to do that. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm going to wrap up. I got 7 quick questions for you. We're going to do a speed round real quick. And these are just random things. Many of them have nothing to do with sports. Okay. So Question number 1, in the last 6 months, when's the last time or how many times have you ordered an Arnold Palmer?
0.
You're not a fan of the Arnold Palmer. Okay, we'll move on.
I am British and English in background. I'm a tea guy, not a lemonade guy.
Tea guy. Okay. You are from the state of Illinois. I know you're a Cubs fan. I don't know about your football members, if you're football fandom, but I'm going to ask you, who had the best verse on the Super Bowl Shuffle, Dan?
Walter Payton.
Okay. Call me Sweetness and I like to dance. I've become a big tree nut guy in the last, as you advance in age, Dan, you realize you can't go for the chips anymore. You got to go for the tree nuts. So the issue with tree nuts sometimes is the shell. Your preference between sunflower seeds or pistachios?
Oh, great question. I would probably lean more towards the pistachios now compared to probably 10, 15 years ago, I would have been the sunflower. So.
Okay, that's great. That shows progress. Muhammad Ali says if you live at 50 like you did at 20, you've wasted 30 years of your life, right? You're an Illinois guy. What's your favorite movie set in the city of Chicago?
Oh, Risky Business. I mean, it's really as you look at growing up as a teenager. I mean, I was young when that movie came out, but we all kind of laughed, as he didn't get into Princeton or he thought he wasn't going to get into Princeton. He goes, I guess it's the University of Illinois.
Illinois. There you go.
That's what we would quote all the time. So it's just the immediate one that comes out, but there's so many great John Hughes movies from the Chicago area. But I just saw Risky Business not too long ago, and it brought back some good memories. So
The Fugitive probably is my top one, but there's an underrated one that I really like with Tom. It's an old Tom Hanks movie called Nothing in Common, where he stars with Jackie Gleason. It's set in Chicago. Big West Tournament 2023. Dan Butterly is at the Dollar Loan Center. You've been working all day, Dan. You've been working 24 hours straight. You haven't had a chance to get a bite to eat. There's a hot dog vendor on the corner there on the concourse. You go get a hot dog. What toppings does Dan Butterly put on his hot dog after he's worked 24 hours straight at the Big West Men's and Women's Basketball Championships?
Well, because I know I'm going hopefully back to my room to get a couple hours sleep, I would get the grilled onions, a little bit blackened if I can. Not, I like them more well done in that respect, but definitely the hot dog with grilled onions is where I'm at.
Absolutely. Favorite all-time television detective?
Oh, wow. That's a great one. So, would NCIS kind of fall in there? I'd go with a Mark Harmon type character. I just like how all those kind of come to. I love Law and Order as well, but I'd say NCIS.
I'm a Bobby Gorin guy right here. If you didn't already know. Okay, last question for you. You're cooking dinner for Mrs. Commish and your lovely daughter Jessica. What is Dan Butterly making to celebrate the end of the Big West Tournament? You've not been home forever. You're finally home. You're going to cook dinner tonight. What can you do up in the kitchen, Dan?
We have I'm literally the cook in the Butterly household, so I try to get home and cook dinner. But we have a tradition coming off of any basketball championship. So this goes for my days at the Mountain West as well as the Big West. Pick up at the airport. We immediately go to our favorite Mexican restaurant. So Mexican food is where we would go.
I always appreciate you giving me a little bit of time, and thank you again.
Absolutely. Always enjoyed the conversation.